We got Justin and Emily. We're going to be talking about how to live your brand, especially today when the world needs you living your brand, living your mission, living what you are here to do and deliver through your company, through your organization, through your message. And we're going to be diving into how to do that, how to identify that, how to really step into that even more. So stick around. It's going to be a powerful interview. Before that, though, I just want to say thank you so much for being here, for choosing to be and become your greatest possible self. One step at a time, that's how we do it. Especially when there's chaos, uncertainty, stuff going on, you just keep moving forward. One step at a time, ask for help, tune into inspirational human beings like Justin and Emily, and just stay connected with what moves you forward, your mission. Next up is our iTunes review of the week, and this week it's by Jenny Bell. Jenny says, so much value. Chris obviously pours his heart and soul into the podcast and the marathon. He brings out the best in his guests, sharing their gifts with the world. Jenny, thank you so much for that review. I appreciate you. If you want to give us a review, get a chance to shout it out on a future 12-hour live stream, go to beergps.com/iTunes or search Greatest Possible Self on the Apple Podcast Store. Give us a review there. Let us know what you love, what you want to see more of, and how we can improve the show for you. Thank you so much. I'm going to introduce Justin and Emily. Before that, grab a piece of paper, grab a pen. Chances are they're going to be sharing some powerful exercises and examples of how you can really step into your mission and your gifts and communicate that and live that so you can serve the world with a bigger impact. So definitely stick around because one idea has the power to change everything for you. Emily Soccorsy and Justin Foster are the founders of the intrinsic brand practice Root and River and the co-authors of Rooting Up, Essays on Modern Branding. Working with heart-based leaders, they believe that all great brands are spiritual experiences. Emily and Justin are on a mission to inspire all leaders to go inward and reframe and redefine the role of brands and their impact on the world. And that is just the tip of the iceberg with this epic Root and River and these human beings. Are you two ready to rock the house?
Let's do it. I'm ready.
Yes.
We are live on Become Your Greatest Possible Self. We're going to dive right into the theme of today, Emily and Justin. We'll start with Emily. Emily, the theme of today is create your breakthrough. So we just want to hear, what does that mean for you? In your perspective, create your breakthrough. What does that mean for you?
Well, it's my own personal guiding belief that when we create, we overcome. So that couldn't be more spot on for me. And whenever we get into a place where we've kind of been broken down or we're facing difficulty, and I've been there in dark nights of the soul, what I think we have to do is to begin creating again, whether that's rebuilding ourselves or it's creating something external to ourselves, or it's recreating our physical health, our emotional health, our mental health, or making art, whatever that is. It's the process of creation that really heals us and reintroduces ourselves to the world. And so I'm down. I love that. It's very inspiring to me.
Solid, Emily. Justin, how about you, man? Create your breakthrough. What does it mean?
Yeah, to me, create your breakthrough means fear is a door. It's not really an obstacle. It's a portal.
Wow.
And I have literally tattooed on my body that the mission is in the suffering. So it's the idea that to create your own breakthrough is you have to turn into your suffering, face it. It's and enter through it like it's a portal to the other side of something. And there's the dark night of the soul to as Em said, but I sometimes refer to it as the long valley. So there's the long valley that as you leave your illusory world where you thought things were a certain way, and you walk this long valley and you get to the other side, and it's the traits of being a human being that we have greater than any other animals. We have intellect, we have perseverance, and we have strategic thinking and self-awareness. Those four things are there, but you don't have access to those things really. They're very dulled and numbed if you domesticate them, and you're trying to make everything just nice and, nerfing your world, like that you never feel pain again. It's like embrace the pain. Fear is a portal.
Wow. Dude, I love it. When you said that, embrace the pain, I don't know if you two have heard of David Goggins, but he's this freaking warrior and just submits himself to the most, treacherous training to be at his top physical state and do like pull-up championships and all these incredible things. And it's like to set our eyes on a mission, right? Some big, hairy, audacious goal to give our life to a mission. And I really love, Justin, that you're using a lot of story elements like hero's journey elements. And I think that's really important to communicate, because stories have been with us for, since the beginning of time. That's how we communicated. And I just love that I'm hearing the elements just right off the bat. I can tell you to really live this stuff in the creativity and the expression and bringing things to life, as well as like, hey, how do you actually communicate? How do you live the brand that you're wanting to portray and express into the world?
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. It's all a journey, and we've learned so much from people like Joseph Campbell, and the work that he did around the hero's journey, and the work that other people have done around the heroine's journey. And that's a little bit of a different journey. It's a little bit of a different take for the feminine experience. It's something I'm super pumped about, and sort of infusing all of that into the brand experience and into the story that you tell as a brand. And understanding those modalities will help you be able to express better what you're here to do, and then engage people in that process with you of finding that and achieving your brand in its fullness with other people's participation and buy-in.
Wow. So good. So you two are the co-founders of Root and River, and I want to know more about like what you do with your clients and the types of people that you work with. We'll go with Emily.
Okay, great. So yes, we work with a specific kind of leader, and we call this person the defier. So this is an individual who sees very clearly that their work is making a difference in the world. They're not just here to make money. They're not just here to find success in their career. They're here to change something. And that can be changing customer service in this industry and making it the best it's ever been. It can be changing an entire business model. It can be changing my community and creating a for-profit, for good business, or not-for-profit. So it comes in a lot of different forms. People are like, oh, must work with all nonprofits. Not necessarily. We are for mission-driven leaders who see their mission and want to make a difference with the work that they do. They're also highly collaborative. They tend to be creative individuals, and they are people who are brave enough to brand, because branding is not for the weak of heart. It's actually something that really requires a ton of courage.
Are we going on a quest here?
It kind of is. It is actually, Chris. It's an inner quest, of course, and an outer quest, because we can dive into who we are as people, as brands, what our beliefs, what our mission, for a long ass time. But if you never make that step of going out and saying to somebody, this is what I do, this is the change I'm creating in the world, and you don't speak that language, you've just missed the whole point. There is no outer journey then. You can't have people join you. You can't have people reject you and give you that information in that moment of challenge. And so branding is for the defiers who are bold, and they're willing to put it out there and risk their own safety and security and being loved and accepted to speak bold truth.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
I think leaders, Chris, when it comes to brand, and this could be your personal brand as a leader, or it could be if you're a solo brand, like a solo thought leader, or you're representing in some way a larger brand. It's all the same. We're all just humans, and it's most of that division or compartmentalization is mythological. But anyway, it's like there's three things that they want. They want to be confident. They want to be able to have like the gnawing unease of an existential identity crisis. They want that to go away.
Yes.
So the opposite of that is confidence. They want to know what to say in any situation. They want to know what words to use. Sometimes we refer to it as words of mouth, not word of mouth. And the third thing they want to know that there's an impact. So when it comes down to marketing, for example, marketing is about impact. Marketing is supposed to be a revenue generating activity, not a budget burner. But if you have an identity crisis, if you don't know what words to use, and you don't know that those words are making an impact, you're just flailing about at that point. And we find ourselves attracting like really mission-oriented people, but they've kind of looked at like messaging, storytelling, some of these as like, oh, I don't want to do that. That's why the name of our course that we sell to solo entrepreneurs is called How to Brand Yourself Even If You Don't Want to.
Yes.
It's because there's an element of that, I think, within people that are more introverted or maybe a little bit more of a humble leader. But our whole, one of our main mantras is make the world react to you. Show them who you are. And when you do that,
Yeah.
that you benefit from that because you are, everyone talks about being authentic and vulnerable. And that's like Em said about courage. Like, yeah, it takes incredible courage to show the world who you truly are when all of our conditioning related to branding and marketing is you have to be an image or have a packaging, and don't show the world who you truly are.
Wow. Wow. I want to dive into more of like the how to, because you're sharing so much gold right now. It's like really building a framework of like how we can know if we're off track and we're flailing about, people who are tuning in, and then what we can do to move like into a more powerful, confident brand and expressing that and be polarizing and shake things up, show up in the world. Before we dive into that though, I just want to get people connected with your stories, because I think that's really important. We're diving into stories so much, so we'll start with Justin. Man, why don't you share a little bit more about your journey up into Root and River and how you got into branding and all the great stuff you guys are doing?
Yeah, I'll be 50 this year, so this answer potentially gets longer every year. But I'll give you the highlights. I grew up on a cattle ranch in Eastern Oregon, so I grew up a cowboy. Grew up around livestock and everything, and then kind of another part of life was this sort of autodidactic, like. Mm-hmm. I did go to college. It's just I went 3 times and dropped out 3 times. And so kind of this like hard scrabbled, it's a little overused, but the PhD, poor, hungry, and driven, there was a lot of that. Like I got married when I was 18. I was a young dad. our first son at 22 when I was 22. And
wow.
So this kind of hard scrabbled like perseverance that was primarily driven by resentment for some of the things I experienced as a child. And then I had in early 2014 was a hell of a year. I met Emily at a conference.
Yep.
And at this point I was beginning to sort of crack open. Like I was opening and opening and opening. And then I cracked wide open, like with this significant spiritual awakening in April of just about a year ago, April of 24, or about 6 years ago, April of 2014. And part of that culmination was that Emily, for me, became the person that I wanted to create the next thing with together, and where everything is collaborative. This is why we do as much as we can together.
Yeah.
And we built Root and River because we had this kindred belief and this iron sharpens iron relationships. We say our first discussion was an argument. And sometimes our last discussion is an argument, but we care about each other, we love each other, and we are both like mission oriented people to begin with. And so to work on something where there's not a lot of gap between like pursuit and purpose and then like the business model, that's very fulfilling.
It's huge. It's huge. I know we talked a lot about mission on the pre-interview call, is like how important that is in like living through our mission. And that's what we're really talking about today, is like how to live that mission through our brand, through all that we do. So I love to hear that your expression of mission is so aligned that it's such a joy to work with each other. So I think those are the best partnerships, is like, yeah, there may be disagreements, different perspectives, but it's really, we're both standing for that same thing of everyone who's a defier, so to speak, living their mission, showing up and making the impact that we know that they're capable of. And so we just got to give them the tools. We got to give them the perspective to step into so that they can thrive. So I love it, Justin. Let's go to Emily. What was your journey like to get to Root and River?
Yeah, so I am I guess I was born in the Midwest and moved to Arizona. So I grew up in the desert. I am one of 4 children. I'm the only girl in an Italian-American family. And so I have a definite sense of being inside of a really powerful tribe as a kid, but very different as the only girl. And so I was sort of always this blend of a creative spirit that was integrating into sort of the rough and tumble world of my family and my brothers. And so I had this like creative secret life. I'm not very secret, but just I can't play another game of whatever. Right. And so I would just drown myself in story and in creativity and books. And so just loved all of those things. And that's what really fueled my ability to go out and then compete and to stay in line with the people that I lived and loved growing up with. So I've always been this sort of integrator of worlds. And it's that force that really threw me into journalism. And so I was a community journalist for 8.5 years and a publisher of community weeklies here in Arizona. I've lived abroad a few times as well, but came back to Arizona and started that career in journalism, and just fell to journalism in like a perfect time. So it was sort of like the old school was becoming the new school, and after 9/11, watching that whole shift occur. And but I got to see the way that things were done back in the day, and then hearken in this new world. So again, I'm at this intersection and this integration, bringing our paper. I started experimenting with blogs early on, and just learning the different ways that people were going to start communicating, telling stories, making connections across the country, across the globe. I really love that side of it. And then eventually I ended up going out on my own and worked as an independent. I was a ghostwriter. I did marketing for some people. I did some social, one of those Jill of all trades. And eventually went in-house with a human behavioral research company and was the VP of corporate communication for their global brand. And that was where our paths intersected, Justin and I. And really, that's when the seeds of Root and River were planted, and we began to really see that people, especially business owners who are passionate and driven, and they're relentless about pursuing their business, right, Chris? But then they have this gap where they can't quite get the words together to describe that. And it's a source of frustration because, as Justin mentioned, in those moments, they can't really have that confidence that they want to have. And what happens is they fall back on cliches and common language and terms like great, and wonderful, and really good, or pain point marketing and just hammering in the pain. These old tactics that for a language geek like me, I'm just like, no, we can do so much better. And we can the key is to dive into the soul to get that fertile soil and then to articulate it. And so it's a bit of an obsession that both of us shared, I think. And that's really what brought us together, that firm belief that there was some injustice in the fact that business owners couldn't ever quite get there. And we wanted to stand beside them and guide them so that they could, and then their businesses could just catch fire after that.
So good. I love what you said about, like, being a word geek, wordsmith. Like I hear it, and I hear the energy in which you communicate, and like there's in a good way, like the drama of a story, of a narrative, of like what you really want to impact people's hearts. I know Jim Rohn talks about, like, to have those moments where you're able to encapsulate the drama in our words so that it really impacts people, so that it really, touches our soul and activates that. And I really hear that in you, Emily. I love your way of speaking. It's very powerful.
Thank you. You sniffed out a little bit of my theater background too. That'll probably surprise you, Chris, right?
I was like, creative, yes. I stamp of approval. but you're a defier, so you don't need my stamp.
I have a theatrics background, but not a theater background.
We cause a production around here. I love it. Okay, so this is a blast. Love getting to know you two. Let's start to dive into creating a brand that we live in the world. And it sounds like really going into the soul of the individual, of the company, of the mission. Where do we start with that? We'll start with Justin. Do you want to start it off, man?
Sure. So we present a journey to someone. It's a continuum, really. It's because there's really no end point in a brand, but there's two phases that we really are the masters in, like being the guide to the hero, and the hero is the client. And that is, the first phase is getting your language right. So language is the fruit of inner work. So the inner work that we do with our clients, whether it's a solo brand or a big giant company, is what do you believe in? What's your mission? What are your standards, which are often unarticulated? They're the unspoken or informal way you do things, but your standards really drive your brand way more than your policy manual does. So that inner language, or that inner work, produces the outer language, and then you get the language right. And it's the music of the brand. So we're almost like, switching metaphors here, like record producers or studio producers, like we're going to get your sound right. The second is infrastructure. And this is more so for smaller businesses. Most smaller businesses they have kind of a hodgepodge, like Rube Goldberg machine of marketing
Yep.
systems.
Yep.
So we bring discipline and order and structure to that. With larger companies, though, it's an interesting thing. They got all the systems, but they don't have the leadership chops sometimes, or the team culture, like how to get a marketing team to work together super efficiently as an elite trust-based environment. And then that third phase, which makes it a continuum, is amplification. So amplification are the habits and practices that you have as a brand done repeatedly over time.
Yep.
And it doesn't mean to be rigid. It doesn't mean that, just because, Facebook ads work for a year, that you got to do that forever. But it does mean that without discipline, without healthy branding and marketing habits, you're not going to get the results. Or to quote James Clear from Atomic Habits, your current habits are perfectly designed to deliver your current results.
Yeah.
And that's a maxim that carries over into marketing as well.
Yeah.
And we stay with those clients at usually a minimum of 90 days, some of them up to a couple years. We stay with them through the journey of this continuum.
Wow. That's powerful, man. Emily, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, just to really get a little granular here, that language phase it's a deep dive. It's not just around, okay, let's throw out all these words and let's just open our thesaurus and let's, it's more of like an internal journey. Like, what are the things that you've believed since before anyone taught you were able to learn something, like things that nobody had to teach you that you've always held inside of your heart and that you've acted upon.
Wow.
And so we're not just brand strategizing, if this makes sense, Chris. It's like we're digging into your soul. We go into what we call the soil of the soul to understand the language of the heart that resides there. And our first task is always excavation. It's not judging or assessing, oh, that'll be a great strategy down the road. It's just like, oh, we have hope, we have love, we have creativity, whatever these elements are. And a lot of times with our clients, we'll say, don't tell us, yeah, that sounds good. We don't want to hear from your brain, your mind. What we want to know is, does this word hit you in the heart? Does the heart chakra just like vibrate, or where do you feel it in your body? And that's the level like we go to when it comes to language. First, it's not an exercise of the intellect; it's an exercise of the soul.
So you mentioned a couple things as far as like how someone could start to look at that, of like, what have you lived naturally, not necessarily because someone told you to or for a career, but like what were the principles and ways of being that you knew innately that's who you are, and here's the evidence that we can see of that throughout your timeline of life, and these different key moments that like really shifted the trajectory because you stood for something and you didn't bowl over on it, or you didn't get defeated on it, or you didn't pretend like it wasn't a big deal for you, or whatever it might be. It's like you really stood in those moments. Is there any other questions or like self-inquiry that our audience can be doing to get clarity on what those points might be and to start to really fuel their brand being in alignment with their soul?
Yeah, I'll throw out one, and then Justin, I'm sure, will throw out another one. One of the ones that I like the most, Chris, because it's always so interesting, is think of something that as a very young child, maybe before the age of 6, like in the very young years, think back to that time and think about a time when you got into trouble, or you were very upset about something, or someone was angry with you. And a lot of times you don't understand why. If you can track back to that child, in that moment, you're not really tracking on why you're in trouble. Inside of that experience is typically a deeply held belief that was just there inside of your soul. So what did you get in trouble for as a child? It can even be in the classroom in grade school. Sometimes we've had clients that said, oh, I was always talking to my neighbor. And it's like, but like, let's dig into that. What was that about for you? Why was it so important? So that's one of mine.
Wow. That's gold. Justin?
Yeah, I think my answer to this is kind of an answer within an answer, which is I would say it's almost impossible to brand yourself the way that we do branding with intrinsic branding and humanistic marketing, so the inner and outer world of the root and the river, as it were. Mm-hmm. It's almost impossible to do that without an inquiry practice of some sort. So that could be an inquiry practice, could be something like meditation or therapy or a religious practice, or it could be something that's like maybe you read the Stoics, or you practice red teaming, or some of these other newer, ancient and new ideas. And the question to ask yourself about your inquiry practice is, what do I need to challenge? Because if you are in a position of authority, if you're the owner, you're a senior executive, you are responsible for your own self-intervention. Your team probably won't do it for you unless you have this super elite, non-permission based culture, which is pretty rare. Usually it's very hierarchical, and you're my boss, and what do you want to hear? You know, it's Andy Bernard talking to Robert California on The Office. And so the inquiry is, what do I need to challenge within myself? Mm. And that will open many doors, and it'll be terrifying. But once you get going, you're like, oh, that thing that I thought I knew, or I thought I was, or I thought we were as a company, with some examination turned out not to be true. And how powerful is it to remove illusion and just be who you are?
Can you give us some examples of that? Because I think it's like, hey, in this introspective process, it's like I could challenge everything. I could challenge, why did I wear these color socks today? Why did I put on this shirt today? How do we know what to challenge? What will make the biggest difference?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you can challenge your socks. It would be a safe exercise. Like, why did I do that?
Did I choose these, or did someone else choose them for me?
Why did I pick this fedora? I don't know. So three things. One is your leadership biases. That's a thing to challenge. Like your first response to something, and this is get into psychotherapy here, but your first response to everything is almost always wrong. Almost always wrong, because it's just the ego mind's buffer. So leadership biases, especially related to how you react to things. Your relationships, like especially your non-negotiables in relationships, what you expect from someone else and what they expect from you. Yeah. And then I think a third place of inquiry is, what does success mean? What does winning mean? Like, we sometimes ask our clients, what's the Super Bowl trophy? Like, what's the point to all this? Are we just checking boxes and, filling out our TPS reports, or are we making meaning in the world that's producing some sort of championship moment? Yeah.
So good. I love it. Emily, did you have anything to add to that inquiry, or anything else that you wanted to mention about what Justin said?
So part of the magic of Root and River is that we come from very different perspectives. So Justin's typically he's really fired up. I challenge. He loves to challenge. It's awesome. But I just come at it a little bit of a different way. So I think, Einstein had this great quote. He said, "It's not that I'm so smart, it's just that I stay with my problems longer." And so for me, a lot of times it's more of like, what do I really need to sit with? What rocks do I need to hold in my hand and turn over and turn over and turn over and turn over, and try to get perspective on from different ways? How can I step out of myself and see this from another perspective, from the other person's perspective, from somebody completely outside of the situation's perspective? It is a form of challenging, but
it's more flow. It's more like harmonious, and there's no like right or wrong. But I hear there's like a not, I don't know, it's like not as intense, right? It's like it's more of a feminine type of discovery, versus I would say Justin's more of the masculine. We're gonna figure this out.
That's the issue. This is what we're going after. I think mine is a little bit more indirect. Sounds maybe bad, but I think a lot of times just sitting and allowing, and that's where creativity comes from too, because if we open up the space for other things to rise, and not needing to solve it, but needing to be inquirers and to be creative, and to also, I work on an emotional level quite a bit as a very emotionally intuitive and conversant person. I think about what needs to rise.
Mm-hmm.
And in our everyday lives, we don't give a lot of room for that.
Mm-hmm.
If an emotion comes up that's inconvenient or that's contrary to what we're trying to accomplish in the moment, typically we could just like, I ain't got time for that.
Yeah.
Right. So, but those emotions stay compressed
Right.
inside of us.
Yeah.
And so what we need to do in inquiry is just open up that space and allow those things to come up so that we can look at them from different angles and decide what needs to be tended to and how we want to do that.
Wow. So once we've gone through that inquiry process and like started to get curious, challenge what we may be having as assumptions, looking at things from different perspectives, it's like really having an openness. And I think the first step to progress is like awareness, right? Being aware of where we are, where we're not, where like just getting a better view. And then from that point, then we could say, okay, here's where we are, like how do we get to where we want to go? Maybe the first step is the destination, and then the next step would be, okay, if I want to get there, where am I at now? And then how do we build a bridge to get to that point? Does that like resonate with you guys? That something like what is the process, so to speak, of getting people to that end transformation of a brand that they're living?
Well, one of the first things we do to that point, Chris, is we do a visioning exercise that we call Will Create Become. And it's about setting that fixed point on the horizon.
Yeah.
Typically, we pick about like a 5-year mark. We feel like that's big enough for dreams, but not too far off to be super esoteric. So we walk them through this process and using declarative language, again, the importance of language here. I will create, I will become, and layering these power words on top of another, one on top of the other, and being very succinct in that. This is not something that goes on for a page and a half. This is like 3 sentences of as much tangibility as we can get, but also leaving room for some big dreams as well. So that's really sort of that kind of foundational ballast point for us.
Yeah.
And there's another, I guess if there were 3, well, I'll give you the one. So it's around category design. So this is a little bit more utilitarian than the spiritual work that we do with brands, with people. It's a category is what conversation do you want to own? And so if you're a solo brand, if you're a solo entrepreneur, that conversation the goal is to make you a category of one. That's what artists do. There's only one Elvis. There's only one Bonnie Raitt. There's only one Brandi Carlile. You know, they're not copies. They are original, and there's a power in that. If you're in a team or a larger company, then your category is this space that you own that no one else owns before. So examples of that are like rideshare. Uber and Lyft own rideshare as a category. And when you have this like when you have taking what Em said about the vision, when you know where you're going, and then what you're doing is you're calibrating all of your behavior, all of your actions, your investments of time and attention and money into your brand. Is it living up to our mission, and is it helping us own a category? And if it's not, whether it's a personal brand or a big brand, if it's not living up to your mission and it's not helping you own a category, it's probably not worth doing. It's probably something that is either a coping mechanism, like a comfort device within the business world, or it's a prescribed activity. Someone said, this is why we like to ban the word should. Like, here's what you should be doing, because we often say our greatest competitor is terrible advice. As here's what you should be doing. You should be doing ClickFunnels and Facebook ads, and maybe you should. But if you know your mission, you know where you're going to the vision that Emily talked about, and you know your mission on the inside, and you know your category that you want to own, man, you can get a lot done.
This is powerful. I think there's a lot of people, so to speak, competing today in the marketplace for people's attention. We've kind of touched on it, but I just want to dive even more into it. What do you recommend around how people show up, how people live their brand that has them really stand out, so that they're not competing anymore and they really own that one of a kindness that you were talking about, Justin?
Yeah. So what we would say is that stop thinking about competing for attention. Let's think about the reverse. Let's think about branding in terms of what your job is to repel the people who are not a fit for you as quickly and efficiently as possible, so that the few who are a fit get attracted and get involved and actually do their research before they even pick up the phone and have a conversation with you or shoot you an email or fill out a form on your site. So let's think about it completely differently, from a different polarity. Like, what we want to do is push most people away because you are not for everyone. And that's pretty much the rule, unless you're selling widgets, you're selling fidget spinners to like kids all over the world. Your market is very small.
Right.
And also your market doesn't really need a rational reason, nor will they respond to a rational reason to work with you. Nobody's got to buy anything from anyone, and you can buy anything you want from anybody. So the way that you make a connection is by being authentic, but that actually comes after you've pushed away everybody else. So we invite people to think about it from that perspective, and it's sort of also, it makes it more of an inquiry. Or so like you get kind of curious and creative when you're like, okay, I'm repelling people. Now, doesn't mean go off and be like super offensive and a total jerk, and but state your truth. Tell what you believe, share your mission. Those are the sorts of things that your people will go, oh my gosh, they're speaking completely differently. They're speaking my language. They're singing my song. I need to know this person. And now you're not in a position to compete. You're in a position to be and to receive what's coming your way.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I know we have a lot of solopreneurs, authors, speakers, coaches who are tuning in the audience. And they may not necessarily have had a lot of track record of like attracting clients, right? Let's say they're like startup entrepreneurs. I'm curious at what is the balance between who has already like come to me and what they say about me, and like the marketplace, what the marketplace wants, what people want, and like who I am and what I want to provide. But I think that's a common conversation of like, what do they want, what do they need, sell them what they want, give them what they need, kind of thing. And what is it that I, as a service provider or person living this mission, want to provide, and what feels good for me? How do you dance in that? What's the harmony between that?
Yeah, the paradox is between arrogance of, I'm so amazing, I don't really care what other people think.
Yeah.
And insecurity, which is, please tell me I'm okay. Please tell me I'm pretty. And that's the paradox. And this is why we talk about, you got to know who you are.
Yeah.
Like we have to answer the fundamental question that all humans should answer, which is, who am I? Yeah. And so that being rooted in your true identity goes a long way towards that balance, Chris, between your art and the way that the market responds.
Yeah.
But I would say this: always choose the side of the art. The market will sort itself out. And it doesn't mean that everything you do has to be like a Tool album where, it's just, 9-minute songs and they don't play them on the radio. It doesn't mean that. We're not doing it for the sake of the art, but honor the art before you worry about the marketplace, and the market will find you. And I can name for you, dozens of musical artists in particular that did that. They didn't sell out. They didn't go, oh, hey, snap tracks are popular now, let's do that. They just kept making music, and then their audience came along. And this is why we say your brand really doesn't have customers and employees. Those are roles. Your brand has believers.
Wow.
And that's it. And if you have believers, you have their attention. And as long as you're ethically, morally, and quality consistent, you will maintain their attention. And because you've earned it. You've earned a trust. It's a real relationship. But if you're kind of vacillating towards, playing what the crowd wants to hear versus playing what you want to say, then once you go to that other side of kind of pandering, it's really hard to adjust your brand to go back.
Wow.
Like, imagine if Patagonia left the way that they brand, which is basically, this is us. If you don't like it, then, don't buy from us. Left that to be a little bit more like State Farm, which is super like, please like me. They wouldn't be able to. Cool. Please think I'm cool. Yes, right. they wouldn't be able to recover from that. You can't do that. You have to be who you are.
Wow.
It's very short-term mindset to be like, oh, I'm going to record a pop song based on this formula. I mean, it is a one-hit wonder. There's no longevity in it. And what we try to do with our clients and what we teach when we speak to people is, yes, this is a long-term mindset. This is an agrarian mindset. This is a cultivation mindset. But it will serve your business and your soul long-term. One-hit wonders make a lot of money in the year or two when they're on the charts. And after that, nobody knows anymore. And a lot of them fall into a huge personal crisis. And what we want to do with our clients is just give them to themselves so that they continue to grow and evolve and iterate and have more creativity with their believers alongside of them.
Yeah.
One of the worst things you can do as a brand is evoke nostalgia. Like, oh, remember Blockbuster? Like, no, that just means you're irrelevant. It's like we say, like when people say they're the best kept secret, we're the best kept secret, and we're like, no, that means you suck at marketing. There's no honor in that. And so there's something to this idea that it's your job as a business owner, as a thought leader, as a human, it is your job to be a light in the world, and you can't be a light in the world if you're irrelevant. If you're stuck in your ways and you're left behind and all you do is evoke nostalgia, then you're not really a brand anymore. You're a memory. Yeah. And a brand is alive in its conscious present state. A memory is, oh, remember AOL, that
God.
type of thing.
No. Please, God, no. So this is great stuff, and it really goes in alignment with being the defier, like you guys talked about in the beginning. It's like you're here to shake things up, right? You're here to really polarize those people who are not the best fit, not 100% in alignment, don't believe what you believe, and like say, I love you, but bye. Like you're not my people. I don't need more followers. I don't need more numbers. That's not what drives this. What I need is believers, like you said, people on the team, customers. Those are just roles. But what I really need is people who believe what I believe, like raving freaking fans who will, drive across the United States to go see a concert, right? Because they're just like so obsessed with whatever I put out, whatever CD, whatever, concert, whatever thing. Like that's the level of fandom that I think a lot of entrepreneurs want, a lot of these thought leaders want. And they're just like, okay, but how, and really going through the process of inquiry, finding out who they are. And I want to talk more about the 90-day process that you take your clients through. And of course they can work longer than that, but like what else happens during that 90-day process that people can start getting excited for those who want a brand transformation? We'll talk to Emily. What happens in those 90 days?
So we start out with doing some sort of a brand audit. If you've already been working, you've already been putting things out there, let's take a look and let's do some brand perception survey to see what's landing. We do that as we do everything, Chris, in a totally weird, different way. It's not just like your standard 1 to 10 surveys, but we craft these questions. So we do some surveying. And then we don't really look at the results until after we have had what we call a root session. And that comes about in the middle of this time together, or towards the front in the second month. This root session is 1 or 2 days, since we do them virtually too. And one day, all day can be so much. So we break them into 2 sections. Yep. And this is the deep dive into the soul to excavate the language and articulate it. Now, a lot of people will be hearing this like, oh my gosh, they're super spiritual and like out there. Yeah, that's part of us. And then we switch to like crazy practical, because none of this matters unless you cross that bridge to use it. Yeah. So we do the deep dive into the soul. We extract and refine, articulate a brand narrative, a category. So your message will determine, exactly what your mission is and how to use these words of mouth to convey. And then we'll look at the assets you already have. We'll look at your social presence, and we'll make a agile-based plan for how we're going to execute this. So you'll have 3 things on that list. We'll have a couple. And then after that time together, we go into that agile methodology, and we are taking you through several practices, integrating content, helping you integrate content onto websites, helping you develop a stump speech so that you can go speak about the brand, and giving you the opportunity to have some early conversations immediately after the root session using the language and getting feedback on it. We always tell our clients, just as an aside, don't say, what do you think? Because when we engage the mind, we're telling people, oh, go into your mind and tell them to figure out an opinion. What we say is you talk the language of your brand and say, how does that make you feel?
Yep.
What's your emotional reaction to that? So anyway, you have some time to do that while we coach you through more of that infrastructure phase and getting into a method or a rhythm for how you're going to go market on the river side, how you're going to practice humanistic marketing. And so we have 2 or 3 calls. And we also have our chief of story, Jen Lawhead, who is amazing. And she helps you begin to refine the storytelling and plug it into the different channels that you're already using. So typically that lasts about 90 days. And then you can continue on with us if you'd like to continue on with coaching and accountability, or perhaps you have some other execution pieces you'd like our assistance with. We're happy to do that. If you need further help than that, our clients, we match them with somebody who's in our partner studio. So we don't do execution, we don't do design, we don't do any of those, but we have this group of special human beings that we love. We never take kickbacks, we never do referral fees, and we just introduce them to our lovely clients, and they get to work with them if they choose, or they can go ahead and work with whoever they would like to work with. So that's how it works.
I like it. I like it a lot. I was wondering about that because I think a big challenge for a lot of people is like they're finding the words first off of who they are, what their brand is about. And then the second thing is like, okay, now how do I actually execute on that with my marketing strategy, with the social media content that I create, with the offers that I put out there, and how do I communicate the transformation that people experience with my offers when they take advantage of my products, services, and being involved with the brand. Because like branding is like the image at one level, right? And then it's also how do we facilitate that delivering that and adding that value to people's lives. So sounds like that is a process with the agile stuff, is like, here's how you can implement the marketing and develop and refine your offers so that what we've done in this root section, you're able to communicate it in everything that you do moving forward.
Yeah. And I think part of it too, Chris, is we say we're coaches. We're not an agency. In fact, we're almost an unagency because we don't do tactics, and we don't get paid in any way, as Kim said, for tactics. But what we're reminding people constantly, because it's a series of unlearning, even if you're a startup thought leader and you're going off on your own, you still have a lot of social conditioning about what you're supposed to do.
Yep.
And so the mantras that we coach around are strategy before tactics. So people come to us often with what they think is like a tactical problem, like somebody going to the doctor with a symptom. They have a symptom. They're like, and they'll say, oh, I don't like my website, or my logo's old, or I don't like. It's like, okay, that's fine, we'll get there. But that's the fruit of the fact that you don't necessarily know who you are.
Yep.
And you didn't. And so strategy before tactics, and the second one is story before promotion. Get your story right before you start promoting. Otherwise, you're like a desperate teenage boy the night before the prom looking for a date. And desperation is a terrible cologne.
Yes.
I can speak from experience. And so it's that confidence to know your story and know how to articulate it. That's part of what we're coaching people through. And then the third thing is self-care before brand care. When you have to, especially if you're the thought leader, if you're the solo brand, you got to have your emotional, what together. You have to be invested. You have to practice self-care, because if you show up in the world all busted up because you're working 80 hours a week and you got a bunch of coping mechanisms, it will show up in your brand. Unless you're selling to dumb people, it's going to show up in your brand. And so self-care before brand care, which is almost heresy in our world as branding people, that we even talk about that stuff.
But I love it that in the coaching aspect, it's like, hey, you you have to first start with your soul and make sure that that's nourished and fulfilled, and like you're strong there, because anything that you try to put on top of that the foundation, if it's not strong, if it's not healthy, if it's not thriving, then that's going to produce like in kind fruit, right? Like not great fruit. Like it's going to be withered at some level because that foundation wasn't in integrity. So get in integrity with that self-care first. I do want to talk about Root and River because I think it's a really cool name. Where did the name come from? Who's responsible for this name?
Well, like everything, it was a collaboration. And once we realized we were going to start something together, we were like, we really just sat down one day and we're like, okay, what are we going to call this? Yeah. And we just kind of had a heart to heart about it. And we got Root first. We always knew it was going to be two things because we're two people and we wanted to have that aspect of it. And so we got Root first because we were discussing like this spiritual and practical and soul and language and it came to us. And then River just followed right after it because that's really what we do. We dig into the root system so that your marketing becomes just an easily flowing river. And so, it was a bit magical. We believe in magic. It's one of our beliefs. One of our values is magic. And so that's a very rational explanation and story that it was just a magical moment. And we just knew it. We knew it was right. And it was available. So there you go. This is a modern version of naming, right?
Two keys. One, it was a magic moment. Two, it was available as a domain.
It always sucks to have a magic moment and then the domain's
then you got a squatter on the domain or something.
Yeah. I love it. You two are a blast. Let's start bringing it home with the final takeaway. If there's anything that we haven't covered on yet that like you're just totally living and loving at Root and River, we can dive into that. Or if you just want to recap on something that we've already covered and just really have our audience take it home, take it to heart, take it into their soul, and take action on. We'll start with Justin. What about you, man?
I think that we've covered a lot of ground here. You're an excellent interviewer, by the way. So we've extracted a lot of stuff for people to consider. And so I'm going to circle back to one thing that is more about reiteration of a point, which is if you are not branding yourself now in a way that you feel like, hey, I'm branding myself, like you're doing it, don't switch tactics, switch your direction. And the direction is to go inward, to go inward. If you don't meditate, start, even if it's one conscious breath a day. If you don't journal, start, even if it's 5 bullets you journal about, what you noticed that day. And if you don't, if you have untreated emotional trauma, please go to therapy because it will show up in your brand. And you will be amazed if you just did that. If you did those 3 things, how your vision is going to change. And there's a certain level of, we don't have this in our society much anymore. It's what the Greeks called Sophia or wisdom. It's what also referred to as Gnostic, which is like an inner knowing. You have an inner knowing. This is why Emily and I say we don't have the answers. We're not prescribing. We don't come to you and go, here's your brand. You know what it is. It's inside of you. You need guides like us to find it, sure. But when you tap into inner knowing, and this is what meditation, journaling, and some therapy or healing can do, is you start to see it. You start to see it. You start to see what we sometimes call the pearl, which is your own awesomeness. Not awesomeness in an arrogant, sort of way, but awesomeness in the sense of seeing the pearl of your worth as a human and as a thought leader. All of that journey begins with some of those basic internal examinations and practices.
And I would also say that it really reflects full circle to your tattoo, right? Like going through that suffering to discover the mission and like what we're here to live. And it's like, if we're not fully accepting, embracing and like healed at a fundamental level from that, and we're able to now move forward without carrying a burden or shame or guilt or whatever wounds from that, and having that show up in our work, like you were saying, then it's going to be really difficult. And so I think like really having that self-understanding, self-awareness, going inward first and saying, hey, like how am I doing and how I express my brand? If it's not hitting the mark, what is it? Is it just like the strategic level, the story level, the higher kind of level, or is there something missing in my connection with myself? Is there something missing in me trusting myself, me knowing myself? And I think that's a really, really important place to start.
Yeah, that detachment from self, from true self, produces pretense. And pretense is fatal to a brand, especially in a crisis. And so maybe a secondary thing is where are you still pretending and why?
Oof, I love that question. Question.
Because there's an answer there. There's no shame in it.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Gold, Justin. Emily, bring it home.
Well, that's what we call weird, not weird, because mine is somewhat similar, but maybe a little bit different approach. But one of my favorite quotes that I've stumbled upon recently in the last couple of months is from Lynn Swift in her book, The Soul of Money, which I highly recommend to all of your readers or all your listeners to check out, which is what we appreciate appreciates. And so I see this in terms of branding, but I also see this in terms of the human tendency to cling to the idea that you are not special. And so branding, and maybe all self-inquiry as well, is really setting aside the notion, maybe it's a very comfortable notion, that you are not special. And what I'd invite you to do is to look at that and set it aside and say, what if I was special? What if I am special? And what if what I appreciate about myself, if I can understand what I appreciate truly about myself and what others who I love truly appreciate about me, what if I can build around that? And what if I could offer that back out to the world? And what impact would that make if I did? And that's really the magical side of branding. It's not about selling your products or services. It's about offering the soul or the self outward. And again, it is very brave, but it begins with an appreciation of our worth and our worthiness.
Nourishment for the soul, Emily. I love it. This is beautiful. You two are epic human beings. Let's talk to our defiers, our rebels, our mission-driven human beings who are wanting more clarity around how to do it, the how. They're feeling stuck. They're feeling not quite connected. They're feeling they're not quite living their message at the level that they know they could. Is there anything else around like who you want to attract? Like I attempted to encapsulate it. Was there anything else around the person who you know should reach out to you and what they can do next to get in contact with you?
Well, life boils down, and I say this as the oldest person in this conversation. Life boils down to courage and execution. We can't give you courage, and we can't make you do anything. So if you're ready to be you, and you are ready to execute, which is to do the work, then we have designed Root and River to have multiple entry points depending on where you're at as a leader. So we have a lot of free stuff. We have a free webinar coming up that you can learn more about. We have really inexpensive brand labs. They're $150, 2 hours of virtual awesomeness around a specific topic. We have a course, How to Brand Yourself, even if you don't want to. That's another entry point. And then it goes up into sort of our premium coaching practices where you get 2-to-1 coaching, because Emily and I always coach together. So you get 2 coaches through the entire process. And that a lot of that stuff is on our website. And this is the main thing. We'll talk to anybody. If this feels, like we say, one of our constant sayings is, if it feels right to work together, let's talk. And we'll see what we can do with that. And so you can just reach out to us off of our website, and one or both of us will get on a Zoom with you and just hear your story and talk about how we can help.
So good. Emily, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I just if what we've said opened up something inside of you, reach out and follow your instincts. If it's called you to crack open a journal or to look through, I tend to do it, look through old books I used to read, whatever it is, like follow that, and the right moment will come. if we're meant to work together, and we're just open to that, and we're open to you wherever you are in your journey.
Boom shakalaka. Justin and Emily, you two are amazing powerhouses. I love diving in. I love the magic that you brought to this conversation, the magic that is in branding, the process. Like the soul is magic in my perspective, right? And that's like there's so much infinite possibility there. And it's like, how can we encapsulate all the epicness within our soul in a business, you know, in a business vehicle? And I think it's a beautiful, like, noble, striving mission to try to do that, you know, to support people with that so that they can have that clarity and take more aligned, connected action and live their purpose and live their mission. So thank you for everything that you do. And anyone who's tuning in right now, go to rootandriver.com. You can also follow Justin and Emily at Root and River. And yeah, you two are just our powerhouses. Thank you so much for being here.
Chris, I think you're a powerhouse and you've got magic too. So thank you for having us. It was really like energy positive for me, especially at the end of the day. I feel like reinvigorated. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the platform. Thank you for being great at what you do.
Thank you. Thank you guys. We'll see you soon. Okay.
Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.